Thanks, David. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to yet another great Cinemaniac screening, the last in their very popular season of It's a Matter of Splatter, celebrating gore in cinema, or gore on film. Tonight we have saved the goriest for the last, with this screening of Joel M. Reed's notorious sleazy, sicky, blood-sucking freak. Filmed in 1976 under the title Sardu, Master of the Screaming Virgins, but initially released under the very apt name of The Incredible Torture Show. Bloodsucking Freaks was something of a rite of passage for most young horror fans who were lucky enough to grow up during those early days of home video in Australia, that great period of the early to mid-80s, when there was a proliferation of local independent video companies springing up who were eagerly raiding film vaults, for anything they could snap up cheaply, market it with a lurid sleeve design and put it on the shelves of the local video shack or suburban mum and dad store that were popping up everywhere and were hungry for new product. Anyone who was around and hiring videos at this time, or have done a bit of research on early Australian home video labels, will know the names I'm talking about: Starbase, K&C, King of Video, etc. For horror and exploitation buffs trawling the shelves looking for new, weird and wonderful fare to discover and enjoy, usually over a few beers or bongs. Seeing the logo for any of these labels on the spine of a VHS instantly made them a must-rent. One of the more famous and successful video labels from this period was Palace Home Video, who via their Palace Explosive subdivision released some of the more controversial and fondly remembered horror films to hit VHS at this time, including Herschel Gordon-Lewis's seminal early gore classic Blood Feast, the sleazy Italian gut muncher Cannibal Apocalypse, Miyazaki's much reviled rape and revenge thriller I Spit on Your Grave, Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, and Leonard Schrader's amazing and still powerfully effective Mondo documentary film The Killing of America. So Bloodsucking Freaks was certainly in good company when it appeared on the Palace Explosive label in 1984, accompanied by a plastic promotional drinking straw that came with a header card advertising it as a Bloodsucking Freaks beginner's kit. If you haven't yet seen the film, the significance of the straw will soon become apparent. I kept this straw taped to the wardrobe door in my bedroom for a few years, right next to the Friday the 13th survival certificate, which my older sister had given to me after she saw the movie upon its first release in 1980, and a roadshow video promo poster for Basket Case that I had wrangled from the staff at St Kilda Video, where I wound up working a few weekends some years later. I wish I still had that Bloodsucking Freaks beginner's kit, but alas, I finally tore it from its cellophane wrapping when my college friend Andrew and I scored a gram of speed and stupidly thought it would be cool to use the Bloodsucking Freaks straw to snort it. So you might find I've given out a little Bloodsucking Freaks beginner's kit to try and bring back those old days, and of course there's the famous Palace Explosive release with the classic colour. So kill people for fun. In many ways, it's hard to defend Bloodsucking Freaks on any level, nor is it a film that's easy to recommend to anyone, since even the most staunch horror and splatter fans can be both offended and outraged, or even sickened by it. The film is essentially an extension of the Grand Guignol, the small Parisian theatre that stood from 1897 until 1962, and specialised in presenting horror-themed productions where the emphasis and the selling point was on the extreme gore effects that were performed live on stage in front of an audience. Translated in English as Giant Puppet, the influence of the Grand Guignol was evident in earlier splatter classics like Blood Feast, which first appeared in 1963, the year after the theatre closed its doors, and is particularly evident in Bloodsucking Freaks, which is essentially a film version of a Grand Guignol production, with the addition of lots of vintage 42nd Street sleaze and nudity. In Bloodsucking Freaks, Seamus O'Brien, looking resplendent and comic book diabolical in his goatee, turtleneck sweater and chunky cheap silver medallions, plays Sardu, who runs a theatre of the macabre, a tiny and way off Broadway venue in which his diminutive assistant Ralphus tortures naked women and cuts off various body parts in front of a rather bored-looking audience, while Sardu offers bargain basement musings on the depravity taking place on stage. Of course, what is happening on stage is not fake, but real carnage inflicted on the poor unfortunate victims of Sardu. who uses his theatre as a front for kidnapping teenage girls and young women and shipping them via the United Postal Service to various unscrupulous third world magnates. The only real thread of a plot involves a famous ballerina and a dismissive theatrical critic who both go missing after being kidnapped by Sardou and are subsequently subjugated into submission by torture, both physical and psychological, and used as a lead performance in his next demented production. Though most locals wound up first discovering the dubious delights of Bloodsucking Freaks on home video, the film did actually receive a local theatrical release, something which boggles the mind in retrospect. The movie first opened in Melbourne at the Capitol 2 and selected drive-ins on September 15, 1983, with Dracula Erotica as a support. It played at the Capitol 2 for a fortnight, then made a return to the drive-in circuit about a month later, where it was paired with I Spit on Your Grave, a double bill that surely would have shocked a few carloads of unsuspecting suburban families as they got a glimpse of the depravities on display on the big screen as they drove home from their dinner at Sizzler for a visit to And much thanks to Dean Brandom, who's in the audience, for providing a lot of that information via his great Technically Worn website. Filmed over 6 weeks between midnight and 6 a.m. in New York City, Soho district, Bloodsucking Freaks was inspired not only by the Grand Guignol, but also an S&M ballet which Joel Reed had seen at a small theatre. And in fact, he actually hired the director of that play, Giles Fontaine, to choreograph the dance sequences in Bloodsucking Freaks. The strange thing about the gore effects in Bloodsucking Freaks is that, as in H.G. Lewis's Blood Feast, they are so primitive and obvious, yet so extreme and visceral and lingering, that they somehow become more distressing than they would be if they were state of the art. Barely a minute goes by in Bloodsucking Freaks without something happening that is bound to offend or outrage someone. The humour on display may be sick, but it is occasionally creative in its foolish invention, such as the moment when one of Sardou's captives has her head placed in a guillotine and a rope holding the blade clenched between her teeth while Ralphus whips her bare backside, testing how much pain she can endure before she has to scream, causing the rope to slip for her mouth, effectively decapitating herself. This is a prime example of the twisted but very cartoonish, almost Looney Tunes level of violence on display throughout the film. Complementing the visual humour is the music score by Michael Saul, which often consists of comical jazz tin piano-based passages, along with basic synthesizer and keyboard sounds that were often present in low-budget horror cinema of this type and at this time. There are also some quirky moments of character development in the film, like Sardou showing disgust at the sadistic dentist who visits the theatre to perform his infamous tooth removal and brain-sucking operation. Because this is shown as to be a personal character kink rather than a part of a performance of art, Sardou shows contempt at the dentist's depravities and decides he doesn't want to associate with such undesirable perverts. Although contradictory, both he and Ralphus enjoy their own forms of equally demented offstage entertainment, such as games of checkers using severed fingers and darts thrown at naked bums with scoreboards painted on them. No prize for guessing where the bullseye is located. When it first opened in America, Bloodsucking Freaks attracted almost universal condemnation from not only the few mainstream critics that bothered to review it, but also groups like Women Against Pornography, who staged a number of protests outside several of the theatres screening the film, particularly in the New York area. Of course, as is usually the case, all these protests really did was attract more curiosity seekers and perverts to the screenings to see what the fuss was about. And in fact, many of the protests were organised only after the Troma picked up the rights to the film and alerted these various protest groups as a way to attract publicity. Perhaps the most memorable character and performance in Bloodsucking Freaks is that of Louis DeJesus as Ralphus, who prior to the film had found notoriety by appearing in a 1971 8mm hardcore porno film loop titled The Anal Dwarf, where he appeared alongside a lady named Very Naughty, a former Playboy club bunny, go-go dancer and porn star, so dubbed because she had the remarkable ability to tie a very long labia together in a knot during her performances. And I actually found an 8mm reel of The Anal Dwarf. We're not screening tonight, unfortunately, but an interesting story. I actually found this when I put an ad in the Trading Post, the old Trading Post, about 15 years ago, looking for 8mm sci-fi and horror films, and I just happened to mention in the ad also looking for any 8mm adult films, and I got one reply from a guy who used to coach a football team in the country in the late 70s and early 80s, and the club used to have like stag film nights to try and raise funds. So a lot of the films they showed were like, there was a couple of policemen on the team, and they used to like raid local shops and the mail, any like mail that they got from dubious sources, and they were the films they screened. And he had like a whole box of these 8mm movies sitting behind, just in his cupboard for like 20 years that his wife was telling him to get rid of. So he offered the whole lot to me for $100, which I snapped up, and the Anal Dwarf was one of most of them. So I was wondering about that football club that film. There was also some John Holmes movies, a complete print of Deep Throat on 400-foot reels, and there was one film that simply marked her loving dogs, which I'm still scared to watch. Louis Jesus would follow up Bloodsucking Freaks with appearances in several other sex films, and also appeared as an Ewok in Return of the Jedi in 1983, as well as in the 1985 kids television show The Adventures of Teddy Ruxpin, where he was cast alongside Marilyn Burns from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. According to some interviews with Joel Reed, the part of Rolfus was originally meant to be played by Herb Villechaize, famous for playing Tattoo in Fantasy Island, as well as the villainous Half-Pint in the 1975 Bond film The Man with the Golden Gun. But when Villechaize took off for Paris and demanded the airport to return home to the role, to film the role of Rolfus, Reed balked and hired Jesus instead. I think he said in one interview, one crippled dwarf is as good as the other. Very nice of him. Helping to create the strange mystique surrounding Bloodsucking Freaks is the fact that several of the people involved with the production went on to meet unfortunate and violent or early deaths. The London-born Seamus O'Brien was stabbed to death at the age of 41 when trying to fight off a burglar at his apartment on May 14, 1977, just a year after the film was released. One wonders if the culprit had actually seen the film or not. Why Viju Krem, who plays Natasha, the kidnapped ballerina, died after being accidentally shot while on a hunting trip in Paynesville, Minnesota on November the 7th, 1983. Louis Jesus passed away in 1988 at the age of only 36. Now in his early 80s, Joel Reed himself has also had his own legal dramas in recent times, having been arrested on New Year's Day in 2015 for groping a woman in a New York apartment. Reed's filmmaking career has been intriguing, if not very prolific. He helmed the 1967 sexploitation roughie Korea Baird after the original director, legendary adult filmmaker Joe Sarno, took off for Sweden. That same year he also made Sex by Advertisement, which was a examination of Swingers and Lonely Hearts newspaper ads, presented by the familiar fake psychiatrist who tries to explain the abnormal behaviour on display in the vignettes. This, of course, was a regular ploy by sexploitation filmmakers at the time, used to get racy material past the censors by trying to pass it off as educational. Wits End was a seedy action-adventure filmed in Singapore in 1969 that was later renamed GI Executioner when issued by Troma on home video in the 1980s. Post-Bloodsucking Freaks, the only feature Reed has his name to as a director is Night of the Zombies, a 1981 horror film starring veteran porn actor Jamie Gillis, and not to be confused with Bruno Mattei's Hell of the Living Dead, Aka Virus, a notorious 1980 Italian gut muncher that was also issued in some countries as Night of the Zombies, including here in Australia, another gift to horror fans by the good folks at Palace Explosive. In the mid-90s, Reed was plugging a sequel to Bloodsucking Freaks, tentatively titled Bloodsucking Freaks 2, The School for Discipline, but was never able to get the funding together, and all that remains of that project is a mock-up promotional poster in which Reed himself poses as a sadistic headmaster of the titular school. These days, Reed continues to be interviewed and asked about his work on Bloodsucking Freaks, as well as appearing cameos in low-budget horror flicks. He is also apparently busy taking legal action against Troma over ownership rights and sales of his most infamous film, and can be found hawking signed photos on eBay in an effort to raise his legal fees. A book on Reed's life, appropriately titled Bloodsucking Freak, The Life and Films of the Incredible Joel M. Reed, has been written by John Walter Spurnow and is due for publication by Head Press in the UK at some point in the near future. While not a film for everyone, or hardly anyone, Bloodsucking Freaks is certainly required viewing for anyone with a strong stomach and an interest in the history of deviant cinema, and it's certainly a fitting finale to Cinemaniac season of It's a Matter of Splatter. So hope you all enjoy.